These are just a couple examples of eco printing on paper. This may not be how ours turn out today, but this is just kind of a really great example of some of the ways it may look, right? And this is just regular like watercolor paper. And some of the things that I used were things that I found in the yard, things that I found in the fridge or the grocery store. I think this is either a maple or an ivy. We've got eucalyptus leaves, some herbs, fresh herbs, some onion skins. I think this is a hydrangea leaf. And this is a rose and rose leaves. And so, there's a wide variety of things that I've used here, and I'll be using some different ones today. But one of the things that I really like about this eco printing process is that you never really know how it's going to turn out. Eco printing involves just kind of foraging for materials, and it definitely invites the experimentation, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about supplies. The first supply that I want to talk about is our natural material. Some of the best materials for this kind of nature printing process are tree leaves, using things like oak, sumac, maple, pine needles. You can use nuts, things like walnuts and beech nuts and things like pine cones. You can use different barks to get some different colors too, like birch and alder and chestnut. You can use fresh herbs. I love using fresh herbs. Not only do you get some fun designs from it, you also get a really nice smell while you're simmering it. So using herbs are really great. Mint, thyme, rosemary, just all sorts, bay leaves, they're all really great to use. You can also use some ground spices. One of my favorite spices to use in this process is turmeric. And you'll see the little hints of yellow that are showing up in my paper today are from turmeric. You get a really bold, beautiful yellow color. And if you've ever cooked with turmeric before, you know that it stains your hands. So it's perfect for coloring different fibers like paper, cotton, silk. But you can use also cinnamon, paprika. That'll give some really nice color as well. Bringing in different flowers also works. Peonies, geraniums, eucalyptus. Eucalyptus is one of my favorites to use. Eucalyptus, even though it's green, it does this really beautiful rust color. And so you see that rust kind of show up, that reddish color show up. That's really lovely. You can use different fruits like pomegranates and berries. When it comes to foods, anything that will tint your hand as you're working with it will be good for this type of dyeing or printing. And then vegetables also, things like avocado, cabbage leaves like purple cabbage. Onion skins are one of my favorites to use, spinach leaves, and then just kind of finding weeds outside. Even if you are using something that maybe not giving you the best color, you can still get a really nice print from it. And so this one is done from dandelion leaves, and you can see I didn't get much color from it, but I got a really nice outline from it. And this one is still good if I want to do any kind of bookbinding or anything like that with it. Now, when it comes to our natural materials, I would say, like, yes, definitely experiment with it. Try it out, and you'll learn something along the way, and you'll get some really nice designs as you do it too. But a good rule of thumb when it comes to eco printing is if you're outside somewhere in the kitchen and you're wondering, is this a good material for this type of process? What I will typically do is take a leaf or whatever it is and just rub it against a coarse surface like a sidewalk. And if it leaves pigment behind, it's going to be a good one to use for this process. And so that's kind of one way to know a little bit if you're going to get some color. But again, even if you're not getting color from your natural material, you can get some really nice prints from it. Now, when it comes to paper, you're going to get more, you will be able to use use more supplies. When it comes to fiber, you definitely want to pay attention to the pigments that come from the natural materials. So those are just some of the best plants, the best natural materials to use for the printing process. And I just wanted to kind of show some examples too. And again, as a reminder, this may not be how ours turn out today, and that's okay. I will say I do a lot of this eco printing. It's one of my favorite processes to do. I love it so much. And every time it's like a big surprise in the reveal. I'll use material that I've used before, and it still always turns out in a really cool, unique way. For myself today, I've got some cilantro and parsley, some arugula and dandelion leaves, and then I'm also going to be using some turmeric and some onion skins. Now, I do want to say with some of the natural materials, you kind of know what color you're going to get. Like with turmeric, of course, you're going to get kind of a golden yellow color. When it comes to onion skins, you'll get kind of that golden color or that purpley color from the purple onion skins. But there are some supplies out there, some natural materials that will kind of give you a little surprise. Things like avocados. If you're using avocado pits or skins, you may get a pale pink. You may get a dark purple, depending on how you prep it. And that's not something you expect, right? Pink coming from an avocado. And then, as I mentioned before, eucalyptus, it's a green plant, but when you use it, you get this really lovely rust color. So there is a surprise a lot of times in the color itself. And then, depending on the type of water you're using or where you're getting your water from, it could be a different chemical reaction. So, using like red cabbage, you can change the color. You can get purple, but depending on if you add like some vinegar to it, or things like changing the water content, you can get pink or you can get blue. So there's a lot of fun in the experimenting part as well. And so I definitely just want to encourage that, just kind of emphasize that too. It's fun to experiment and just see what comes. These are the natural materials that I'm going to be using today. But you can definitely bring in so many more things, flowers, weeds that you have outside, tree leaves, house plants work well, or take a look in the fridge. You may find some really good stuff in the fridge too. So those are the natural materials that I'll be using today. The next supply I want to talk about is our paper. So the best paper to use for this type of eco printing is going to be watercolor paper. And that's because it's nice and thick, and so it'll hold up. We're going to be adding water to our process, and it's going to be sitting in steam. And so we want to make sure that that paper survives, right? You can experiment with other type of paper. I've used mixed media paper before and cardstock. They work well, but the watercolor paper really is the most durable. It's the sturdiest, the thickest, and just kind of it holds up the best when it comes to water. So I'm going to be using some watercolor paper today. I've got a couple scrap pieces, and then I've got some pieces here that are already cut. And so it really doesn't matter the size of the paper that you're using. I'll walk through like folding it and also stacking it. But you want it to be small enough that you can fit it in your pot. Now, when it comes to that steaming part, the pot I'm using today is really big, but it's because it's what I have. It's like a canning pot, but you can use a saucepan, you can use something smaller. But I'm mentioning that now to say whatever size paper you use, you may need to cut it or fold it to get it in that container. So I'm using like an 8x5 square and a four by 6 square. So these are kind of my starting materials or paper today. And again, whatever size paper you have is okay. You just want to make sure it fits inside whatever saucepan you're using. Now, the next supply we're going to need is going to be either twine, rubber bands, or clips, these kind of clamps, paper clamps. And this is so when we make our bundles, we can close it together and kind of compress it a little bit. You can use twine, which I don't have on hand right now, or rubber bands. They both work well. But the only thing I would say about using those two materials is that you want to make sure you've got the natural color instead of like a colored twine or colored rubber bands. And the reason for that is that when we do that steaming process, that color from the rubber bands or the natural, like the twine, can transfer, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something to kind of keep in mind as we do this process. And then clamps are also a good thing to use too. So there are lots of different materials that you can use to create this bundle. And then I'm going to be using foil today. One of the things that we want to do is create this kind of barrier or shelf. So we're not putting our paper bundle directly on the bottom of our pan. We want it elevated a little bit. And so that's why we're using the foil. If you don't have foil, that's okay. You can use other things. One of the things that I use most often is a cheap loaf tin that I got from the dollar store that I just poked a bunch of holes in, and I can reuse it over and over again. And this is just what I set at the bottom. But you can do foil too, and I'll walk through how to do that foil. You can definitely use a vegetable steamer basket that you put in your saucepan. That's really good to use. I would say though, whatever you use for this process, especially if you're going to be doing it a lot, you want to make sure it's dedicated just to like art practice. One of the things that I do is I'll go to thrift stores and get like saucepans or crock pots or things like that to use in art making. And it's because I use it a lot. And so that's kind of what we want to keep in mind. And you'll see, I'll show with this pot here. I use this one for a lot of fiber dyeing and printing, and you can see it's starting to like really tarnish and color that pan. So or this container. So I don't want to use it for like cooking soups or things like that. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And then the last thing we need is going to be water. We're going to be doing some steaming today. That'll take about 20 to 30 minutes. And so it's good to have that water to kind of help that steam along. So let's start our process. And we want to prep our paper first. So we're going to start by folding our paper. If you have your like big pieces, we'll go ahead and fold them. We want to make sure that it's small enough to fit inside whatever pan, saucepan, or canning pot or anything like that that we're using. And so this one may be a little big. So what I'm going to do is just kind of fold it. You know, these papers I make all the time, and the main reason for that is because I love using it in art practices, whether it's collage or making my own books or using it in card making. It's a lot of fun to use. That gives really cool designs, gift tags. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do, I have my two that I'm folding, and then I'm going to bring in maybe one, two, three. I'm going to bring in about 4 more pieces today. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, although you can make your stack much bigger. I will say the thicker your bundle is, the more time it'll need to steam. And that's just so that steam can go all the way through your bundle. You can make a couple bundles and just kind of stack them as well. That's another option. But what I'm going to start off doing, I've got my paper folded, and then I'm also going to take I've got 4 pieces of paper. So what I'm going to do is put 2 on top and 2 on the bottom. So I've got my little bundle here. One of the things that's really helpful is to pre-soak our paper. When you do any type of fiber dyeing, pre-soaking is important. Pre-soaking just kind of opens those fibers up so they're ready to take the pigment and really just kind of latch onto it. So what I want to do is kind of that same process with the paper. It won't take as long in our pre-soak. So I'm just putting a little water here, and it just kind of helps that process along. So what I'm going to do is just take my paper. I've got my little pile of water here. I'm just going to saturate that paper for just a moment. And then because I'm using turmeric, I'm going to pull out a little tray here because turmeric does get a little messy. And that's one thing we want to just kind of be aware of too. When we're using different materials, some of them may stain our hands. The good news is that everything that I'm going to be talking about today comes off with a little soap and water. So that's good. But you can also use disposable gloves. Okay. So my paper, you see, I didn't like soak it long, just that little bit, just to get it a little saturated. We don't need to squeeze it out because we're about to put it in some water. So what I'm going to do before I even start layering my bundle, I'm going to turn on my pot of water just to get it warming up. One of the things that I've done before is like heated some water up in like a tea kettle to get it nice and hot before I put it in this pan. But what we want to do is get that water nice and warm. I'm going to bring mine to a boil and then turn it down. But I'm going to get it pretty hot. So I'm going to let it do that while I'm prepping. So if you're following along, if you want to go ahead and put some water on the stove, and also just be really careful with it too, since we're talking about working with our stove today for our art process, we just want to make sure that we are being safe while we're doing it too. All right, so I'm going to start off. I've got my turmeric that I'm going to use, and I've got my natural materials here. And so what we're going to do is just kind of layer. Now, I'll say when I do my bundles, I don't put anything on the top or on the bottom, and that's because that's where those clips are going. So what I'm going to do is just kind of open up that first page, kind of like a book, and that's where I'm going to start laying things in. Now, when it comes to materials, just in general, whenever you're doing like any type of art process with materials, you want to make sure you're using some of the fresher material. The fresher, the better when it comes to any type of dyeing or printing, fiber dyeing or printing with natural materials. And that's because your fresher material is more durable and will tend to last, hold up better. Okay. The only material that is good to use that doesn't have to be super fresh are onion skins. And that's just because it's loaded with a whole lot of tannin. And so it'll kind of takes care of itself. But I'm going to take some turmeric here and just kind of shake it on top. The turmeric can get really messy. And so you want to just make sure you're kind of keeping it in its space, not going all over the place. Mm. So I'm just kind of adding stuff here. One thing I want to just kind of mention while we're adding to it is that these pages are going to go next to each other. So if you put something on both sides like I did, you're going to have an overlap in patterns. It's not going to go through to the other side, but you're going to have both of those mirror. So I'm doing it with this one. I maybe not do it with the next one, but I'm just going to kind of flip it over. Just kind of having fun with arranging. Now, when it comes to arranging, I do want to say try things out. If you want to create a design, that's good. If you want to just kind of play around with different materials and just kind of fill up the pages, that's good too. Whatever you want to do is good. This is our first kind of venture into it, so experimentation is important for sure. But also just kind of practicing. The next time we do it, we'll get better. We'll know a little more of what to expect. And I'm just going to constantly add some of the turmeric because even if I'm not using a plant like the dandelion that'll give me a nice color, that turmeric will help give me a really nice background, right? So I'm going to use this one just like that. I'm not going to put anything on this side and just let it mirror. So I'll open it up and then just continue to keep adding. Now I'm going to use some onion skins here. And I'm just going to kind of lay those out too. Sometimes you'll get some really nice prints from this. And sometimes you'll just get like washes of color. Both are nice. And it's hard to know like which you'll actually get during that process. So I've got a few little purpley onion skins. I'm just going to kind of arrange. Again, there's no wrong way to arrange it, right? So again, I'm going to add some more turmeric. Just kind of throw it around. And you can see I'm not being like super careful with how I'm pressing things or laying things out. I'm just kind of having fun, like arranging it, just pouring. Sometimes you get those nice prints, but sometimes it's nice just having those areas of color. And I don't know what is going to show up what'll print best out of the materials I have today. It really is kind of an experimentation. Again, I like doing the turmeric. I like that little yellow. So I'm just kind of laying that out, spreading that, and turning the pages. Adding colors, adding textures. And, you know, when we do this with paper, you do get some really nice prints sometimes. So I'm just gonna, again, add some more of my natural materials. And like I said, herbs are one of my favorites to use because it does smell good. It smells really nice. And using eucalyptus too is also really good. You can get that really nice smell. It might be strong, a strong smell, but can be really nice. And you can see I'm not being super neat with it. So that's why it's helpful to have that tray. Right. And then I'm going to do my last one here of, let's do a combination of our leaves here. Let me get that out of the way. Okay. And then I'm going to do a little more turmeric. And then I think that, yeah, it's my last page, right? So now I've got a really nice bundle here. What you can do is wrap it with twine if you like. That works. You can use rubber bands, and I think that's what I'm going to use here to just kind of keep it together. You want it to be compressed a little bit. Hold it together. And if your bundle kind of bends a little bit, that's okay too. It doesn't have to be like super flat to do this process. I've got my bundle here. My next step, now that my water is heating up, my next step is to put my bundle in the water, right? So what we're going to do is kind of wrinkle up our foil and put it in the bottom, right? Again, this kind of creates that little shell. So I'm going to use the last bit of my foil here. And this is a very technical process here. It's called scrunching. Yes, just kidding. But I'm going to do kind of a loose scrunch and kind of make it into this arch shape, right? So you can see it's not super tight. And you saw just how much I pulled out, just like maybe like 1.5 foot, not too much. But I'm doing this loose scrunch. So I have that little shelf. And so my next step is to take it. And I'll bring my pot here with my water. So I'll take it, put that in the bottom, and then add my bundle right on top. Now you can immerse it if you want. It kind of changes how it'll look. Or you can just kind of leave that water. I'm going to add some water to the top, but I'm not filling it up. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is take my lid, put it right on top, and then I'm going to let that just kind of simmer. We're going to let that simmer, and in a little bit, we'll pull it out and open it up. One of the tools that I use is just a set of kitchen tongs. You can also use just like a spoon or skewer, anything like that to lift it up. It's going to be hot to touch, and so you want to make sure we're not burning our hands. Okay. We're going to let that steam for about 20 to 30 minutes. We'll do a little peek to see how it's going. But while that's simmering, I want to talk a little bit about some variations here. One of the things that I started using recently that has really helped this kind of eco printing or eco dyeing process is using a crock pot. The crock pot is nice because you don't have to constantly check to make sure the water isn't kind of cooking out, evaporating. When you're using a pot like this, you want to make sure you're checking on it. Even for that 20, 30 minutes, you want to make sure you're checking on it. You don't want to just leave it sitting there because you want to make sure it has enough water in there. Sometimes it evaporates out. The benefit of using a crock pot is that usually, just like I did here, I'll heat up the water in like a tea kettle and then pour it in the crock pot and then use either the foil or that loaf pan to kind of lift it up and then put my pieces in there to steam. And then they can steam for your 20 to 30 minutes, or if you're doing something, another fiber like fabric, it can steam for longer. But that crock pot can be really, really helpful. I like using it just because it's like you set it and then you can forget about it. You don't have to constantly keep checking on it. Now, one of the other things that I want to talk about, little variations, are things like using different fibers. So we're talking about eco printing on paper. We can do the same process with fabric. Silk is a good one to use because it just takes pigment so well. And so what you're doing is basically laying out your fiber. We did with our paper, we had our paper laid out and we were kind of turning the pages. With your fiber, you can do that same thing. Lay it out and kind of lay your material on top and fold it up on itself. With fiber, you're more likely going to get that bleeding through the layers. And so one of the things that I've started doing with that to kind of prevent the bleeding through the layers is using a strip of a garbage bag. So cutting my garbage bag into a strip that's about the size of the fiber that I'm using. And that prevents the bleeding going through the fabric. Now, when it comes to doing this type of dyeing or printing with fabric, the best fabric to use is going to be the 100% natural. So that's going to be things like 100% cotton, 100% linen, 100% silk, 100% bamboo. They all work really well. What's really interesting about the fiber dyeing process is that the prints turn out differently depending on the fiber you're using. You'll see more of a print come from the paper, but with the like print materials, like the fiber materials, the fabric, the silk will turn out one way. The cotton will look a little different. The linen and bamboo may have a slightly different look too. And then what you can do is for mine, I'll just start rolling it up. Sometimes you can roll it around like a metal, like a vegetable can or some soda can, something like that works. But I'll just kind of roll it up like this. And again, because that garbage bag is on there, it prevents that bleeding through continuously. But I'll have my little bundle here, and then I can fix it with rubber bands or twine, and it'll hold it together. And so when I do that steaming process, I'll just set it in there like this, and I can set bundles on top of itself too. Usually when I do this type of fiber dyeing, I'll do like lots of versions, lots of different silks or cotton or whatever. So I usually have a big pile that I'm doing at one time. And that's also, you know, where that crock pot, using that crock pot or a larger pan can come in handy. So I want to show some examples of some eco printing on silk, just so we can kind of see an idea of how those might turn out. And I will say the best printing like color that I get, that I always get something good from, are going to be the eucalyptus leaves that you can get from like Trader Joe's, onion skins that you can get from your onion at the grocery store, and then just going outside sometimes and finding leaves, you can get some really great prints. But the eucalyptus, the onion skins, turmeric will always give you this really beautiful yellow. So those three are kind of the big three that you can see. I'm going to open this up a little bit. I apologize for how wrinkly it is. But this way you can see kind of the pattern that comes from the eucalyptus leaves, playing around with that. And then the onion skins. I think it's just a really pretty like color, range of color. And then this one here, it's a different type of silk, but you can see those leaves start to show up some really nice printing. Now, when you do actual fabric like the silk or the cotton, that pre-soak is incredibly important. That pre-soak helps kind of open those fibers up so they're ready to take that pigment. Um, and one of the things, if you've ever done fiber dyeing before, you know that's important to have a fixative or a mordant. And basically what those are, that's kind of added solution to help make sure that that pigment, whatever pigment you're using, can really latch on to the fiber, right? And so some different types of fixatives and mordants are going to be things like soda ash, alum. You can use white vinegar. I use white vinegar a lot. You can also make your own mordant, which is taking like rusty bottle caps or rusty nails or springs and putting it in like a little mason jar of water for a while. And that kind of makes your own mordant. And that's a good one for natural materials too. But I will say I've had a lot of success using white vinegar as a fixative. So usually when I make the natural fiber, like the silk or cotton, I'll add some white vinegar to that pre-soak. So it just kind of helps like open it up. So that's where you want to kind of add that. When it comes to the paper itself, you don't have to add that fixative or the mordant. And that's because like I mean, it's paper. We're not going to be washing the paper. And I do want to say, just while we're talking about fiber dyeing in this series too, just want to say that typically when something is hand dyed or hand painted, printed, you want to hand wash it. It's just a good rule of thumb. When you do silk, you want to care for it the way you normally do with silk, not heat, hand wash, gentle cycle, those type of things. So that's just kind of a good rule of thumb to kind of stick with when it comes to any type of fiber dyeing. Now, I'm checking my pot right now, and I do want to say, steam. I do want to say that my paper is kind of bowing up a little bit, and that's okay. If yours is doing the same thing, know that that's okay. It doesn't have to be super flat. It just needs to be together. So if all your pages are bowing up, that's fine. You just want them to be compressed together. I have done fiber dyeing in the microwave using the regular vegetable steamer bags. These are really helpful. It's just the regular ones that you use for vegetables. They have a little strip on the top that you can peel off and seal. And so what I've done before is taking water, like a cup of water, and putting it in there, and then putting my bundle in there and sticking it in the microwave. I will say, however, be very careful what plant material you put in the microwave, and make sure that you're using a way to bind it that won't hurt the microwave. So things like paper clips or like rubber bands. Twine has been what I've used, like a cotton twine is what I used when I was doing the microwave. So you want to be careful what you're putting in the microwave. And then it's not that we're immersing our paper bundles in the water. We're wanting that steam mostly. Now you can do, since we're talking about like fabric as well, you can do nature printing or eco printing with a dip dyeing process. And this is where like you use like avocado, for example. I'll take the avocado skins and kind of clean them and chop them up and the avocado pits and put them in some water and let it simmer for a while. And that's how you get some of that pigment from that natural material. And then you can add your fabric into that bath and let it sit for a few hours in that, like while it's cooking. You won't get the type of prints that you do with the steaming process, but you'll get a color that's kind of more throughout. So depending on what you want, you can do that immersion as well. You still want to do that pre-soak. The pre-soak, regardless of what material you're using, that pre-soak, even if it's just water, that pre-soak is important. I'm going to go ahead and pull my bundle out. And so I'm bringing back my little foil here. And I'm just going to lift up the lid and use my tongs to lift it up. And so the turmeric you can see is kind of showing through a lot of my paper here. I didn't put it on the top, but just that steam kind of helped that turmeric, that pigment from the turmeric kind of move through all of it. Now, when you are experimenting with natural materials and you're not sure if it has a lot of color in it that's going to transfer, I definitely suggest using something like paprika or turmeric because that'll help it get that print shape, even if that natural material doesn't have color. So I always add, I like the yellow, so I do that a lot. You can add other ground spices as well. So what I'm going to do, once I pull it out, you can undo it right away, or you can let it sit. And I will say, I usually do it right away because I get excited and I want to see it. But the truth is, you can open it as soon as you can touch it. It may be too hot to start. So what I'm just going to do is just kind of cut my little rubber bands here and just show some examples of how mine turned out. And I got kind of all over the place. But once you open it up, take the rubber bands off, right? You'll want to kind of open it up and you can see that I've got like this areas of turmeric, but where this cilantro was, there's that really nice shape that's come up. So that even if it doesn't give you a lot of color, you get that shape. So what I'm going to do is just kind of open them up and lay them out and just let them rest for a bit. Once they dry a little bit, you can see my turmeric is kind of built up. Once it dries, I can dust that off. I'm just going to kind of let it cool a little bit. Open it up. And you can see the onion skins giving this really nice burgundy kind of purpley color. So I'm just going to kind of let them sit. Now, I will say, these that we're doing, we're doing it at kind of a faster pace. But if you do find that, you know what, maybe I didn't get the prints I wanted, it's okay if you were just kind of peeking before really undoing it. You can put it back together and let it steam a little longer. 20 to 30 minutes is a good start. And most of the time will work. But again, it just depends on like the material you're using, the content of the type of chemicals that are in the water and things like that. It's all experimenting. Once this dries, I'll be able to dust off that turmeric and I'll be able to see the prints that showed up from this. This is one of my favorite things to do. I love talking about using natural materials for their pigment, and I'm really excited to continue our exploration of botanical art making.
Don't forget, like and subscribe so you can be notified about our future videos.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye, everyone.